Turn in your Bibles to Daniel chapter 7. And if you remember what we talked about last week, we talked about the first few verses, the first 8 verses, but we talked about Daniel being given a vision, and he was given a vision of 4 beasts, and we realized that it coincided with the vision that Nebuchadnezzar had received, the image of the man. And so we realized that the lion that Daniel saw the vision of was representative of the head of gold that Nebuchadnezzar saw, relating directly to the Babylonian Empire. We realized that the Babylonian Empire was overcome by the Medes and the Persian Empire, and the animal that Daniel saw was a bear, and what Nebuchadnezzar saw was the chest and arms of silver. And then we realized that the Medo-Persian Empire was overcome by the Grecian Empire. And so that was represented by a leopard. And then by Nebuchadnezzar's vision was the belly and the thighs of bronze. And then the Grecian Empire was overcome by the Roman Empire. And we realized that what Daniel saw was a dreadful, terrible, indescribable beast. And what Nebuchadnezzar saw was the legs were of iron, and the feet was partly of iron and partly of clay. And so Daniel was given this vision as a vision of what was taking place. Remember, they were under the Babylonian control at that time. And so he was given a vision of the future of the kingdoms, the nations that would be conquering other nations, kingdoms would be conquering kingdoms, and all the way down to the time that we are actually living in today, and will be seeing as we see the Roman Empire having taken over for many, many years, and then we're going to be seeing it revived again in the European nations and in the end times here. And so then in that last part, as Daniel was watching this, he is watching the Roman Empire, this beast that was not describable. It was dreadful. And anyway, he saw it being devouring other nations, just devouring people, overcoming them, breaking them in pieces, trampling them. And it was different than all the other beasts. It was powerful. It had 10 horns. And he says, I was considering the horns in verse 8 of chapter 7. And there was another little horn, a little one coming up among them, before whom 3 of the first horns were plucked out by the roots. And there in its horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking pompous words, or great things, or blasphemy, really, against God. And so, starting with verse 9 then, Daniel is watching this vision that's taken place, and then he sees another vision. He sees he says, I watched till thrones were put in place. And the King James says they were cast down. That is an incorrect translation. So it means literally put in place. The thrones were put in place. And we recognize that in Revelations, the 4th chapter, that there is, it says, around the throne are 24 elders, and those elders are worshiping the Lord. And he said they were sitting clothed in white robes. They had the crown of gold on their heads, and they were celestial representatives of the entire race of people that love the Lord across the world. And so they're the representatives of those nations. And then we also recognize that as there was a promise that was given that we would reign, that saints, the Christians, the believers would reign with Christ for 1,000 years in the millennial reign of Christ. In Revelations 3:21, it said, and this is talking to the Laodicean church, the lukewarm church, it says, to him who overcomes, I will grant to sit with me on my throne, as I also overcame and sat down with my Father on his throne. And so we recognize that there's going to be thrones that we're going to be sitting at. We're going to be ruling. We're going to be reigning, in a sense, basically kind of co-ruling in a sense with Christ. but we will be in a position to where we will have some authority that he's been given to us, that we will be able to control those, especially during the 1,000-year reign of Christ, those that have come through the tribulation and into that millennial reign of Christ. And so we'll be reigning with him, judging with him in those during that time. And so then he says, I watched till the thrones were put in place, and then the Ancient of Days was seated. In other words, God was seated, and his garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head was like pure wool. And it's talking about the focus of the greatness of God. It's talking about his purity. It's talking about his holiness. It's talking about his righteousness. There's no one like him. Perfect in every way. And so his garment, the Ancient of Days, God seated there, ready to give a judgment. And this is for the purpose of bringing a judgment. And so upon all these other nations that were not godly nations, that were turned against the ways of the Lord. And so we see this description of who he was. And then it says his throne was a fiery flame, its wheels a burning fire. In other words, God was executing justice and righteousness upon the wicked people, the wicked nations that were out there. And so his throne, you can imagine this scene, the perfection, and then the fiery judgment that is going to come out of that perfection upon those that are have rejected the Lord, have come against God, are defying God. And then it says in verse 10, a fiery stream issued and came forth from him. And so this fiery stream coming forth from him, just simply making a proper judgment upon a wicked people. And so we can see the wrath of God coming out. You know, it says that there's coming a time when the wrath of God is going to be revealed against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of sin, of people that are purposely coming against God, purposely coming into a place to where they're defying God, they're blaspheming God, they don't want anything to do with God. And it says there's that day coming when the wrath of God is going to come up, and it's going to come against those very people. And this is what it's really talking about, a fiery stream, the wrath of God issued, and it came forth from before him. And then it said 1,000 thousands, and this is the picture of what he is seeing there in the courtroom scene. It says 1,000 thousands minister to him. Can you imagine that? Can't even begin to imagine it. Then 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. So in this courtroom scene, there's a mass of people, mass of believers, a mass of angels, and whatever it is that's before him, all these people standing before him, with him as he is bringing this judgment upon these wicked nations and wicked people. And the court was seated. And so the court was seated now, and then the books were opened, and so the judgment was going to begin. And so then he says in verse 11, he says, I watched then, and because of the sound of the pompous words of the horn was speaking. And he says, I watched till the beast was slain and his body destroyed and given to the burning flame. This is an amazing focus here, because what he's talking about is, as this judgment is coming, it's going to come against the Antichrist, this little horn. It's the Antichrist. It's going to come against him. And as it is coming against him, he is giving this blasphemy all the way up right until the very time when it's just over with for him. He's blaspheming God. He's just doing everything he can to defy God in pride, in a pompous way, in a way that's very wrong, and just focusing in on trying to defame God all the way until he's actually slain and his body is destroyed and given to the burning flame. Amazing focus that is taking place right here as Daniel is describing this focus. Turn over to Revelation 19 for just a minute. We're going to see a little bit of a picture here. Revelation 19. And we'll see a little bit of the picture of what is actually taking place here, starting with verse 11. Revelation 19, verse 11. It says, Now I saw heaven open, and behold, a white horse, and he who sat on him was called Faithful and True, and in righteousness he judges and makes war. His eyes were like a flame of fire, and on his head were many crowns, sovereign authority. He had a name written that no one knew except himself. He was clothed with a robe dipped in blood, and his name is called the Word of God. And the armies in heaven, clothed in fine linen, white and clean, followed him on white horses. And so now we see the heavens open. He comes down in the clouds. He's coming down to bring, this is actually at the end of the battle of Armageddon, when he comes down and he comes down to bring a judgment upon this Antichrist and upon the false prophet, and just put an end to the battle of Armageddon and bring a judgment. So here he is. So all the armies of heaven, including you and me, are going to be coming back with him on these white horses, following him on white horses. Now out of his mouth goes a sharp sword, and with it that he should strike the nations. In other words, he speaks the word. That's all he has to do. We already talked about this, but the countenance, the glow of his countenance, the radiance of his countenance, and the word that he speaks it's just going to be putting an end to all the evil and to the end of the battle of Armageddon. And so he himself will rule them with a rod of iron, and he himself treads the winepress of the fierceness of the wrath of Almighty God. And so this is, again, the time when the wrath of God is going to be being poured out. And he has on his robe and on his thigh a name written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Wow. There's coming a time when every knee will bow and every tongue is going to confess. Well, that's one of these times is going to be here. And then, of course, we're going to see it at the very end of the millennial reign of Christ, when the great white throne judgment takes place. And every knee will bow. It'll be too late to bow in repentance, but it'll be bowing in acknowledgement that he is for sure the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. And so it's going to be there. So then he said, I saw, verse 17, an angel standing in the sun, and he cried out with a loud voice, saying to all the birds that fly in the midst of the heaven, come and gather together for the supper of the great God. This is the battle of Armageddon. Come together and eat up the flesh of all these masses of people, millions of people from all over the nations that are coming, the army that come, be actually Russia and China that actually come against the Antichrist and his armies. The huge armies on both sides of those things are going to be coming together, and the Lord is going to come into the midst of that whole mess where the blood is flowing unbelievably, and he's just going to speak the word, the radiance of his countenance and the spoken word, and that's going to be putting an end to the battle of Armageddon. And then this judgment will be taking place. And so he says, gather together for the supper of the great God. Come and have a feast on all these bodies, that you may eat the flesh of kings and the flesh of captains and the flesh of mighty men and the flesh of horses and of those who sit on them and the flesh of all people, free and slave, both small and great. And I saw the beast, the kings of the earth and their armies gathered together to make war against him who sat on the horse and against his army. And then the beast was captured, with him the false prophet who worked signs in his presence, by which he deceived those who received the mark of the beast and those who worshiped the image. These two were cast alive into the lake of fire, burning with brimstone, and the rest were killed with the sword which proceeded from the mouth of him who sat on the horse, and all the birds were filled with their flesh. What a picture. As we see God obviously dominating the scene. He is in total control. He is God that is sovereign in every way, and he puts an end to the things that are taking place down here upon this earth. The Antichrist, the total rebellion of the Antichrist and all the people that were with him that took the mark of the beast, and their lives were done. It was over with for them. And so as God puts an end to it, we see the greatness of God, we see the sovereignty of God, we see the King of Kings, we see the Lord of Lords for who he really is. And it's a powerful focus that actually takes place here in this thing. And so in that verse 11, he's just simply describing the fact that the pompous words, the Antichrist was just blaspheming God all the way up until God just spoke the word and he was done. His body was destroyed. He was cast into the burning flame. Verse number 12 in Daniel chapter 7 again. As for the rest of the beast, and this is talking about the other nations, they had their dominion taken away, yet their lives were prolonged for seasons and for a time. In other words, they were not being judged at this particular time, along with the Antichrist and the false prophet, but they were going to be being judged at the end of the millennial reign of Christ, when the great white throne judgment came to pass. So they were spared until that time. And then he says, as he is watching, he sees amazing thing. He says, I was watching in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man coming with the clouds of heaven, or coming out of the clouds of heaven. And this is what we just basically were describing here, coming down on the white horses, coming down to bring a judgment against the unbelieving people of the world. And so he comes down, he came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. And so he comes before God, and then to him was given dominion and glory and a kingdom, that all peoples and nations and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom the one which shall not be destroyed. And so what we see is, as he comes down, he comes to the very throne room of the Ancient of Days, to God, and God hands over to him dominion, glory, and a kingdom. In other words, the millennial reign of Christ. He hands over the millennial reign of Christ to him, that 1,000-year time of rule, when Jesus comes back into Jerusalem. His feet touch the mountain of Jerusalem. Mount of Olives probably, and it splits the mountain, and the waters run in a couple of different directions, and one of them runs down to the Dead Sea and purifies the Dead Sea. And anyway, it's just a powerful time, a powerful focus, but he is given and handed over then the dominion of the earth, the glory and the kingdom and the world, that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. So all of these people that actually came through the Great Tribulation, the 7 years of Great Tribulation. By the way, the rapture has taken place before that time, and then the Great Tribulation, and then the wrath of God being poured out upon the people as he brings that final judgment upon the people that chose not to believe, that chose to take the mark of the beast and all those things. And so now the ones that have survived during that 7-year period, there are people that have survived that during that time. And he says all of them are given over to him, so that all the languages, all the nations, all the languages would serve him, and his dominion would be an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, his kingdom the one which shall not be destroyed. And so we see God himself handing over the kingdom in that sense to Jesus, and Jesus reigns for that 1,000-year, that millennial reign of Christ. So we see all the benefits and the blessings of just simply living for the Lord. In fact, it's a horrible thing when we begin to picture people not living for the Lord, people at that halfway mark during that 7 years of tribulation, when the abomination of desolation is set up and the worship that is required and demanded is set up, and the people take the mark of the beast, and their fate is sealed. From that point on, the fate is absolutely sealed for those people that have taken the mark of the beast. So in verse number 15, it says, I, Daniel, was grieved in my spirit within my body, and the visions of my head troubled me. In other words, as Daniel is watching this whole thing, he is seeing all of the devastation that's going to come as the nations come against each other and they conquer each other. The blood, the death, the warfare, the starvation, all of the things that are taking place and are going to be taking place during that time. And then, of course, as it comes down to the very end times, to where there is going to be the reign of the Antichrist for those 7 years. Daniel's seeing in all of this, and he's seeing the devastation that's going to come out of all this. He says, I was grieved in my spirit. and the visions of my head troubled me. I came near to the one of those who stood by, probably Gabriel, because that was Gabriel was dealing with him beforehand, the angel Gabriel. And he asked him the truth of all this, so that he told me and made known to me the interpretation of these things. And so now he gives him the interpretation of these things. He says, verse 17, those great beasts, which are four, and he's talking about the lion, the bear, the leopard, and the one that cannot be described. All those different beasts. Those great beasts are four kings which will arise out of the earth. But the saints of the Most High shall receive the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever. And so Daniel is recognizing the devastation that's going to be coming upon the nations, through the nations, as they wipe out each other. One nation after another wipes out each other all the way down to the last one that continues to consume anybody that's in opposition of it, the Roman Empire and the Roman nation. And so he sees all this, but then he's given this vision of hope. There's a hope here. He says, but the saints of the Most High shall receive the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever and even forever and ever. And so he's got to be greatly encouraged as he sees the end result. You know, it's always like, you know, it's kind of like fun. If you want to know what happens in the book, you read the end. So some people, you know, they read the introduction. They don't like the introduction anyway. They can see the plot and then they go to the end, so they don't have to worry about how it all ends. Well, we can read the Word of God too. We know how it all ends too. And it's kind of like what Daniel experienced here, that he recognized that the end result was going to be that the whole kingdom was going to be turned over in the millennial reign of Christ to Christ himself, and then to those that are have been raptured out of in the church, raptured, and they come and they reign over that over all those people during that 1,000-year reign of Christ. It's going to be a rule of control, a control that is not going to allow the people that are down here that have survived through the 7 years of tribulation. They're not going to be allowed to do anything unrighteous. They're going to be totally under the control of all the, basically be a bunch of the saints, the believers, us, down here, controlling all of the things that are going on. Nobody's going to get away with anything until the end of that 1,000 year, when Satan is going to be brought back and released for just a little while, and he'll come out to deceive the nations, and there will be a great deception that will take place at that time. But they're going to be under the righteous rule, that 1,000-year righteous rule of Christ. And so Daniel sees all this, and then he's greatly encouraged, because he recognizes that the end result is going to be that 1,000-year millennial reign of Christ, when righteousness reigns, when Jesus reigns from Jerusalem, when all of the raptured saints, the body, the bride of Christ is what we will be. We'll be there kind of like policing the territory, giving a king, having been given a kingdom and some authority. Now, we don't know exactly what that all means, but there will be something that's there that we will be working to help control the issues. So then in verse 19 it says, then Daniel is still wondering, what in the world is that fourth beast representing? What's he mean? Then I wished to know the truth about the fourth beast, which was different from all the others, exceedingly dreadful, with his teeth of iron and his nails of bronze, which devoured, broke in pieces, and trampled the residue with his feet. And the 10 horns that were on his head, and the one other horn which came up, before which 3 fell, namely that horn which had eyes and a mouth, which spoke pompous words, whose appearance was greater than his fellows. And so what we understand and see here is that as Daniel is looking at this whole focus, he is very confused about what this last beast is. You know, what is this thing? You know, we don't even know how to describe it. He can't even say what it is. It's just something that's very, very vicious, worse than all the other beasts before that. And it's just something that is very, is confederated together with 10 nations, basically, under its control. But out of this 10 nations, there rises up one of those nations that becomes stronger than the rest of them. And through deceit, through the personality, probably the charismatic personality of that person, that little horn, which is actually the Antichrist. He rises up through deceptions, and we'll talk more about this later, but he rises up and he begins to bring to pass just a reign of terror, but he comes to pass on the scene in those 7 years of tribulation, that first 3.5 years, with peace, with an ability to bring order out of the chaos that has taken place within the world, to be able to bring economic prosperity back into the focus, to bring back jobs, to bring back things that would bring order and peace back into the nation, into the world. Amongst all the nations. And so he is in that position. And so he has been risen up, and as Daniel is looking at this, he says, who is this? What is this? What does this mean? And he's just simply laying it out that this person, this Antichrist, is going to come up from obscurity, but one of those 10 nations. He's going to conquer 3 of the nations by force, and then the other 7 nations will actually just go along with it and just succumb to his authority. So the Antichrist is going to be in a position of great authority. There's also the false prophet that's going to be raised up, and they're going to be able to establish some kind of an order, some kind of a unity, some kind of a focus during that 7-year reign. And of course, the first 3.5 years of that reign are going to be a reign basically of peace, basically of prosperity, basically a reign of blessings, not totally, but it'll be mostly there. And then, of course, we recognize at the halfway mark, the 3.5 years, there's going to be a total turnaround that is going to be taking place. And the Antichrist is going to set himself up in the temple to be worshiped. By the way, he's built the temple. They built the temple in that first 3.5 years. And then he's going to desecrate the temple by his image, demanding that people worship him. And that is exactly when people are told to flee. And so what we're seeing is the ability for the Antichrist to have control for a period of time. But in the last 3.5 years, and we're going to find this out later, that as the seals are broken, as the trumpet judgments come, as the bowl judgments, those things come to pass, we're going to see God working in such a way that he is seen to be in absolute control of what is actually taking place in the world. And he is bringing devastation into the world against the Antichrist, against the followers of the Antichrist, and all of those that have taken the mark of the beast and all the things that have happened. But devastation is going to be taking place there in a purposeful way until the Antichrist is completely overthrown and that rule is over with. His rule is over with. So the Antichrist is going to come in on the scene. He's going to be powerful. He's going to be cursing God every chance he gets. He's going to establish some kind of a state religion of some sort in order to try to secure unity amongst the people. And of course, he's going to have his leader, his religious leader in that control position, to where actually he will be able to bring the religions of the world, for the most part anyway, under the control of just coming together under the control of the state, worshiping the state, worshiping the emperor, worshiping him, the Antichrist. And so they will come together and be able to have some kind of a cohesion in the religious focuses that will bring a cohesion back into the nation itself, into the world itself, into the rulership of the world, the Antichrist. So all these things are prepared. We recognize that as he goes on here, that in that 19th verse, he says, then I wish to know the truth about the fourth beast. And then in verse 20, the 10 horns that were on his head, and the other horn that came up from before which three fell, namely the horn which had eyes and a mouth and spoke all these pompous words, blasphemed the Lord and whose appearance was greater than his fellows. And so he says, I'm watching, and the same horn, that Antichrist was making war against the saints and prevailing against them until the Ancient of Days came, and a judgment was made in favor of the saints of the Most High, and the time came for the saints to possess the kingdom. And what is happening here again is, as the Antichrist comes in, he, at that 3.5 year mark, he establishes himself to be worshipped, puts his image up in the temple of Jerusalem, demands people to be worshipped, requires the number, the mark on your hand or on your forehead. And by the way, that'll be making a lot of sense when that comes together. And so when people, everything that's going to be taking place is Antichrist coming into rulership, coming into a place of bringing economic prosperity, coming into a place of bringing peace, bringing a lot of things together. In that first 3.5 years, it's going to make sense to submit to the rule of the Antichrist. And then when he sets himself up in the temple to be worshiped, that is exactly when, in Matthew 24, the Jews are told to flee. Don't go into your house. Don't go down and get any of your stuff. Just get out of there, because that's when the Antichrist is going to wipe you out. So the hatred, the covenant is being broken. There was a covenant established at the very beginning of those 7 years with the Jews. And then at that halfway mark, the covenant will be broken. And when that covenant is broken, he sets himself up to be worshipped, the abomination of desolation, and then he requires that everybody gives their allegiance to him and to the state. And of course, the Jews are told to flee while they have a chance. So we see that there's a great work that's taking place here that is very devastating to those that haven't taken the mark, because they are going to be marked and either starve to death or be killed. And there will be a few of them that probably will make it through to the millennial reign of Christ. But the majority will be absolutely killed. They will be hunted down. They'll be murdered. There'll be whatever is necessary to take place to get rid of them. They're going to be taken out. And so the Jew also will be taken, and 144,000 of those Jews, and we'll talk about this later, but they'll be marked to where nobody can touch them. They're told to flee. They flee to the rock city of Petra, where the Lord takes care of them, and brings about some safety to them, protects them, and supplies their needs. And so it's kind of interesting, because a few years ago they had actually stored supplies at the rock city of Petra, there in anticipation of that taking place, of the Jews fleeing to the rock city of Petra. So I don't know where it is today, but that was a few years back when they did that. So anyway, all of those things are going to be coming to pass. And the Lord is going to show himself powerful. He's going to show himself strong, and begin to come against all of the Antichrist, with all the different things that are going to be taking place, with all the different judgments. And so the Antichrist then, in that last 3.5 years, is going to be being pressured by all of the devastating things that take place, are things that God has purposely brought together to bring about a tremendous problem on his behalf, to where he's going to be under severe judgment until the very, very end, when he is totally judged. But he will be suffering all of the things that are against the unbelievers. The things that God brings about in those 7 years, in the last 3.5 years, the judgments, the bold judgments, the different judgments that come to pass, are not designed to come against the people that have refused to take the mark. They're called the saints. The Jews are called, and the people that have refused to take the mark, the believers, they're called saints. And so they are not going to be, the judgments are not coming against them, but they are coming against the Antichrist and all of the unbelievers. And so God takes care of his own people as they flee to the rock city of Petra, the Jews themselves. So we see the Antichrist persecuting the saints for that 3.5 for the last 3.5 years, trying to do everything he can to destroy them. And then what we're seeing is, as he's watching, the Ancient of Days comes and he brings a judgment in favor of the saints of the Most High, and the time came for the saints to possess the kingdom. And thus he said in verse 23, the fourth beast shall be a fourth kingdom on earth, which shall be different from all the other kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, trample it, and break it in pieces. In other words, he's going to be in total control of basically the world. Now, not every nation is going to be in compliance with the Antichrist, and that's where the last war that comes out of this will be a war to where Russia and China, together with their massive army, are going to actually come against the armies of the Antichrist. And that's what the Battle of Armageddon is going to be in that situation. And again, God is going to come back. Jesus is going to come back, and he's going to put an end to that just by his countenance and by the word of his mouth. He just puts a stop to the whole focus. And so he lays out here in verse 24, then to Daniel, the 10 horns of the 10 kings, they're going to rise from this kingdom, and another will arise among them, the Antichrist, and he will subdue the 3 kings, and he'll take out 3 of those nations, those kingdoms, those 3 nations, and conquer them, and then the other 7 will just go right along with them and become a part of that 10-nation coalition. And so he'll speak pompous words against the Most High. He shall persecute the saints of the Most High, the Jews and the believers that haven't taken the mark. He shall intend to change times and law, and then the saints shall be given into his hand. Now, he shall intend to change times and law. This is where the Seventh-day Adventists base the focus that he's going to require Sunday worship and obliterate the Saturday worship. And that's why they are saying and so adamant about worshiping on the Sabbath day on Saturday instead of on Sunday. And this is the basis of why they are saying that, is because they believe that this will be one of the things that he changes. He's going to change times. He's going to do a lot of things to change in order to try to bring a unity to basically the world and through the 10 nations that he is in control of. And so then the saints shall be given into his hand. And so the Jews and the believers that have not taken the mark of the beast obviously will be come against. They will starve to death. They can't buy, they can't sell without the mark, or they're going to be killed, one or the other. And so God will protect, though, the Jews as they flee down to the rock city of Petra in that area. But then he says in verse 26, the court shall be seated, they shall take away his dominion to consume and destroy it forever. Then the kingdom and the dominion and the greatness of the kingdoms under the whole earth shall be given to the people, the saints of the Most High. And so we see something here that's a radical turnaround that's going to be taking place, to where the Ancient of Days, he sets up his court of judgment. And in that court of judgment, he destroys the little horn, he destroys the Antichrist, he destroys the false prophet, he brings them, as we've read earlier, he brings them into a position of judgment, to where they are cast into hell, into the fire. And so that's where they are, and they're going to be there forever. They're going to be forever into torment, forever and ever and ever. That's a terrible picture, but it's something that's going to be taking place. And so after the Antichrist then is removed from the earth, and then the final kingdom, the 5th kingdom, is set up, and that is the millennial reign of Christ upon this earth until the 1,000 years are over with. The final judgment takes place, the great white throne judgment, and then there's going to be a new heavens and a new earth. The old is going to be dissolved, taken away, it's going to be gone, and the new heavens and a new earth will come into the picture. So the beautiful thing about this is that as Daniel is watching this, as Daniel is seeing this, he is recognizing the greatness of who God is. He's recognizing the greatness of who Jesus Christ is and the greatness of God. And so as he recognizes that, as he watches the setting as the court takes place. He's watching and seeing the picture of the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, the greatness, the purity, the justice, the righteousness, the holiness, all of these things. He's seen a picture of God to where he has seen himself for what he really is. And he recognizes that even as he is looking at this here, he is in a position to where, as we come into Revelation later on, he begins to fall apart. He weeps and he cries because no one is worthy to take and open the seals. And we'll talk about that another time. But no one is worthy to open the seals. He falls apart. Why? Because he saw the greatness and the beauty and the power and the holiness of God. He saw the preeminence of God. He saw who God is in every aspect, which showed him that he wasn't anything. In fact, as they come and the books or the book is there that has the seals, is bound up by the seals, and the search goes out. Nobody, not the seraphims, the cherubims, the 24 elders, the 4 that are seated at the throne, worshiping the Lord, none of the saints, nobody is able to and qualified to open the seals except for the one. And this is what he is looking at. Daniel is seeing Jesus, the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords. He has seen the throne room. He's seen all of these things, the Ancient of Days. And he's seen the Ancient of Days giving his authority over to Jesus Christ. And we see the difference between the two, the radical change between the Antichrist and Jesus Christ. And as we'll see in Revelation, when they see the picture of Jesus Christ, the picture of the Antichrist is a vicious person with charismatic personality that comes to bring good things, but is very deceptive. He's very deceptive in everything he does. But when they see Jesus, they see him as a lamb that was slain before the foundation of the earth. A lamb that was slain in order to redeem mankind. And so that would bring us back to Philippians, the 2nd chapter, and to where we see a true picture of who Jesus is and what's going to be taking place. And starting with verse 9, it says, "Therefore God has highly exalted Jesus Christ." Exalted him. He's given him the name which is above every name, that at the name of Jesus every knee should bow, of those in heaven and of those on earth and of those under the earth, and that every tongue should confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. We recognize that as every one of us that have given our hearts to Jesus Christ, we've already bowed our knee. We're already in that position of great victory. We're in that position of having been redeemed. And yet what we realize is Jesus Christ, one of those days, one of these times at the end of the millennial reign of Christ, when there's the great white throne judgment, every person that's ever been born, ever been alive, those that do not believe in Jesus Christ will be brought to that time, to his throne room, and they will be brought and judged. The books will be open. And the book that shows that their name is not written in the book of life. And they will be cast out into outer darkness, which was never prepared for man, but was only prepared for the devil and his angels. But there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth, a terrible, terrible focus. But that comes a time, and this is what Daniel saw as he was watching and seeing the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, the one that was on the throne, and Jesus Christ, the perfect God incarnate, as he saw him in the beauty and the glory and the righteousness and the holiness and all of the blessings of God, as he saw him on the throne, he was totally humbled and recognized that this is the one that is going to be every knee shall bow, every tongue shall confess that he is the Lord, to the glory of God the Father. And so as we look at that, at this time together, we realize that God did a work that is a powerful work of buying our redemption. And we have every position within us to say, God, thank you. Thank you for what you've done. And we're coming to that time of communion this morning.